What's up, MetaNerdz? This video is all about a military transport of the Old Republic era. Classified as a freighter, this ship was originally built by Kellenic Technologies in order to transport construction materials across the galaxy. This is the same company that would produce the popular LB series bulk loading droid and the Sentinel, with both often being transported together inside of the KT. When arriving on world, these massive droids could load and unload construction materials with ease, while being protected by the Sentinel, and then they would just jump back in and set off for the next project. A rather mundane existence, but the volatility of the Old Republic era would change that. The regulations on ship firepower were way more lax than during the time leading up to the Clone Wars, so the 400s were already equipped with 2 dual laser cannons. The strength of them is not stated, but I doubt they were just light cannons, at least medium, if not heavy laser cannons. And these things were most likely targeting sensors. They are not listed as another set of cannons. Though this helped to protect the ship from raiders, the true fate of the KT was in the hands of the Kellenic leadership. Due to company mismanagement, they had to liquidate most of their assets and even sold off trademarks and patents, with the KT falling into the hands of Republic Fleet Systems. With the right to manufacture this self-reliant and heavily tested freighter, RFS produced a version of this ship that was more streamlined for a military role. It would cost 280,000 credits, nearly 3 times the cost of the later YT-1300. Keep in mind, inflation in this galaxy is very confusing if it exists at all. Its top atmospheric speed was 800 km per hour, or 497 miles per hour, making it slower than later bombers, but twice the speed of the Gozanti-class Cruiser. It had a Class 2 hyperdrive, which is on par with most other freighters, but it is unknown if it was equipped with any shielding, though for that price I would hope so. What it really focused on now was transporting troops and supplies, holding 400 troops or droids and 40 tons of cargo, a weight equal to 50 dewbacks. That's the troop transport equivalent of 13 LA-AT gunships, and with those massive cannons firing forward, it could protect those troops as they exited through this forward-facing hatch. A design choice that was criticized by some military advisors, but they were able to make it work with proper suppressing fire and clearing of an LZ. If you think that 400 troop capacity seems a bit too high, then let's take a look at its size. At 24 meters or 79 feet long, it was more than half the length of the Sandcrawler and equal to the Dynamic class freighter. Being 20 meters or 66 feet wide, it was slightly thinner than the Dynamic and 3 Wookiees wider than the Sandcrawler. And at 11 meters or 36 feet tall, it was half the height of the AT-AT. To have some real-world comparisons, it would be about 3 stories tall, nearly 1.5 semi-trucks long, and about 8 U-Haul vans across. So I did some rough math to see if the 400 troop capacity is even possible, and I did get a volume of 187,704 cubic feet. That would of course be if this ship was a cube, which it's not, and if you look at the shape, it seems like only about a third of the space is being taken up, if that. But if we say that a single person would take up a space that was roughly 6 feet tall, 2 feet wide, and 2 feet long, it would be about 24 cubic feet of space. So 400 troops would be 9,600. That's with everyone all cramped in and doesn't account for any interior space going to anything else, or again, the fact that the ship is not a cube, so think about those numbers as you wish. I was just surprised that the cubic space for all those troops was so low. And then if you go and look at a real-world troop transport like the C-103J Super Hercules, it makes me more confident that it could actually carry that many troops. The Super Hercules doesn't have the largest troop capacity, but it has very similar dimensions if you ignore some of that wing length, and it can carry 92 troops. You can see that they're all seated and not all tightly packed in, so if we could take up all this space and they were standing, I think you could easily get that number to 200, and then you got all this space up top that could work as a second level, getting you to the 400. Terrible flight conditions, but it makes me confident that especially with the droids instead of organic troops, it's definitely plausible that 400 could fit inside of the KT, and it's definitely not absurd. A crew of 8 would help to keep it running optimally through hyperspace, space battles, and then atmosphere while setting down planetside. Although it was a great asset to the Republic, after the Great Sith War, the Senate voted to defund a lot of these military ships. Instead, they were contracted out to cheaper manufacturers, but the spreading of this tech and blueprints eventually meant that companies were building them for private individuals and then selling them to the Sith Empire. The same is true for the Sentinel droid. Its most notable use was during the Battle of Daxon during the Mandalorian Wars, where 20 years after defunding them, the Republic was seen coming back to this trusted freighter. thousands of Sentinel droids were deployed, but 20 years after that, it was now an integral part of the Sith Empire, both as troop transports and freighters, often being used to shuttle vast amounts of kolto and other supplies to their conquered worlds. Bounty hunters and pirates also made great use of the KT-400 in these years, but whether some still remain in the galaxy is unknown. So that's it for its history, but you definitely want to hear these cool facts and behind-the-scenes stuff. It first appeared in Knights of the Old Republic, and then later in KOTOR 2. Additional facts come from the Knights of the Old Republic campaign guide, and this isn't confirmed, but some suspect that the Herald class was based off of this design. Either another Kellenek design that they had to sell off, or something Republic Sinar systems derived from the KT. If you want to connect with us, help support this channel, or get your own copies of the reference material used to make this video, be sure to check out the links in the description. Special shout out to our supporters over on Patreon, but most important of all, remember, when arriving on the battlefront, don't be the first one out of that door. And the Force will be with you, always.